So today I'll just be going through these some examples from the assignments and giving you some ideas about how to write paragraphs and how to approach assignment 1.4. And here we go. So this is just an example of a document and what you could be looking at, something roughly that you could be looking at writing. So you could be writing with writing paragraphs, you can have this introduction and then supporting points. And I'll go through that. The general way is to say Plato's allegory of the cave has a deeper meaning that applies to the process of acquiring higher learning. So introducing what you're talking about or what your main argument or point is going to be in the first paragraph, and just summarizing really briefly. Then saying, to demonstrate this, you're going to make 2 points. They're really short assignments, so I think 2 points are good. And you can say first, second, blah. Just summarize those 2 points that you're going to make. Second paragraph for this assignment, I would say you're looking at something like in Plato's allegory of the cave, something happens, what happens? Fill in the blanks. And then summarize Plato's allegory of the cave, because the assignment is to summarize Plato's allegory of the cave. So you want that summary. Seems like the second paragraph is going to work for that. Now for explaining, that's where your 2 points come in. And you can have a paragraph for your first point where you're going to explain how it applies to higher learning, and second point about how it applies to the process of acquiring higher learning. So now you have an introduction that introduces what you're talking about and the supporting points that you're going to go through. I'm going to go through this in more detail after I show you a few more examples from the other assignments. Paragraphs, the structure of essays generally follow this outline where you have an introduction and you have kind of general introductory statements, you have a thesis statement, and maybe you outline the arguments that you're going to present in your paper. So introduction, then you have body paragraph 1, an argument, body paragraph 2, an argument, 3 and 4 arguments. This is for like a longer paper. These are such short assignments, but you can still have the same outline. And you can do that by having your first paragraph introduce your argument and your supporting points. Paragraph 2 can support your first point. Paragraph 3 can support your second point. Try not to do a summary of the reading. A lot of students have been doing this, where they just go through line by line and give a commentary. First, Plato or whoever wrote blank. Next, so-and-so said this and that. This was to show, this led to this other thing happening, and then this happened, which demonstrated blank. It's very kind of stream of consciousness or just following the reading. We're not really looking for that. That's more along the lines of a reading comprehension answer. I understood what I read. Dan has an apple. Here's a red apple. What does that Dan have? An apple. Like, we're not looking for that you can read it. We want to know that you understood the argument. What were the arguments being made? What were the premises, and what was the conclusion? That's really what's important. Here's an example where you could say rocks exist. That can be your conclusion. The supporting premises are, we can see the rock, we can touch rocks. Okay, there's support for the statement that rocks exist. All of the readings that we're going to be doing in class are going to have a general argument, something. There's going to be some like thesis, some main point, and then there's going to be support for them. So what we want from you is a summary of an argument, where you're saying the main argument that was presented by so-and-so author of this reading this week was blank. The main argument that was presented by Plato was blank. The main argument that was presented by Nagel was blank. And then say something like, the author supported the argument in 2 ways, blank and blank. Next paragraph. The first way that the author supported the argument was blank. Second way the author supported the argument was blank. That's the outline that we're looking for. Here's an example. From assignment 1.1. The assignment was to explain Nagel's account, explain how Nagel's account applies to what Nietzsche says. So, first paragraph, Nagel and Nietzsche, this is just one way to look at it. Nagel and Nietzsche appear to have disagreed. However, upon closer inspection, they may have agreed. That's introducing what you're going to be stating in the rest of what you've written. First paragraph, Nietzsche wrote blank. Nagel seemed to express disagreement with this, da 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 da. You know, multiple sentences, whatever. But just fill in, that's the paragraph. It has one cohesive point that it's making. Each paragraph should do that. That's how paragraphs work. And then lastly, you're saying, however, Nietzsche also wrote something, something, something. Nagel would largely agree with this. Very clean, easy to read. That's what we're looking for. It goes through the arguments and it answers the question. Assignment 1.2, let's go through an example. The assignment was, what according to Socrates is Meno not understood about philosophical inquiry? Socrates' response to Meno's definition of virtue was to gradually indicate that virtue has a timeless form. This shows that according to Socrates, Meno did not understood that doing philosophical inquiry means pursuing the forms. So we answered the question and we've introduced what we're going to be saying in the next paragraphs. Now we say Meno has defined virtue as blank. Socrates disagreed with the definition by indicating da 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 da. Final paragraph, Socrates expressed his alternative view as something, something, something. Okay, very clear, answers the question. Let's look at an example from assignment 1.3. Explain Socrates' argument and the conclusion he draws between the pages 17-25. First paragraph, introducing. Meno proposed the paradox that blank. Taken literally, Socrates' response to the paradox is that knowledge is recollection. If we take it figuratively, Socrates' response is that higher learning is like recollection. Now, in the second paragraph, we can explain how Socrates refuted Meno's paradox by explaining that the soul is immortal. And that was his literal argument. To show this, Socrates provided the demonstration with an educated boy, the math demonstration. Less literal interpretation, which is from the lectures, is that Socrates was only comparing recollection to higher learning. Okay, and you could go through that. So now you've introduced your points, and then you give the points in their own paragraphs. Very clean. So again, now back to assignment 1.4. Summarize Plato's allegory of the cave and explain how it might apply to the process of higher learning. Back again to the outline that I provided before, where you're saying Plato's allegory of the cave has a deeper meaning that applies to the process of acquiring higher learning, pretty much rehashing the question that was asked, then saying to demonstrate this, I'll make 2 points. And you could give the 2 points, just a summary version of the 2 points. And I want to say that don't copy this exactly word for word or anything, but like do get, I think it will help you a lot if you kind of follow this general outline for these assignments. I'll leave it up to you. But again, in the second paragraph, it's asking you, the questions ask you to summarize Plato's allegory. So you're going to have to summarize it somewhere. I think it makes sense to summarize it in the second paragraph. Then you're just saying, this is a summary of Plato's allegory of the cave. Now you're making the first point about applying the allegory to the process of higher learning. You know, you can even say that here. The first point I will make about, you know, applying the allegory to the process of acquiring higher learning is explain yourself. Second, explain yourself, explain your second point. Now, what points are you going to make? I'll go into that very briefly, just some ideas for you, and then I'll end this. So one option is to talk about the puppeteers who are casting the shadows on the wall. Another option is to talk about outside of the cave in the realm of forms, or the process of returning to the cave is another option. I'll go through some ideas that I have that maybe you could include, maybe you have other ones for the lectures, it doesn't matter. But here's some ideas. Puppeteers include the news, like Fox News, social media influencers, writers on television programs, Twitter accounts, things like this, right? These puppeteers often project, let's say, a financially or politically motivated version of reality to the public. And while freedom of the press is good, we need to be shrewd. So the process of higher learning, we can say, is like to prepare people to be shrewd, to prepare people to deal with these puppeteers, to give an alternative account if someone is pulling the wool over the public's eyes, if someone's lying or deceiving, or has an agenda. Hopefully higher learning would be helping, especially democratic societies, to deal with the puppeteers. One kind of general idea that you could talk about. Second idea, something you could talk about outside of the cave. Higher learning should bring us to understand deeper truths about the reality of our earthly and human condition. And higher learning should bring us to understand the conditions for knowledge. That we can understand that as like science, like what's the human condition, as in, what's the psychology like, what's going on in people's brains, sociology, economics. What is this human condition? The earthly condition, like what about climate change or things like this? Understanding the world, the universe, physics, whatever it may be. Higher learning can help you to understand those things. And then the conditions for knowledge, maybe it's scientific method or some kind of rigorous ways of acquiring learning. Hopefully, higher learning would help with that. That's how you could talk about that one. You could talk about potentially returning to the cave, if you want to discuss this one. And again, you can discuss any one of these three or none of them, but you can mix and match. These are just some ideas. So for this idea, returning to the cave, coaxing others out of the cave should be gradual and unforced. It should be a dialogue, not a monologue. I think that's what we're learning from Plato. Forcing others out will bemuse them, and they may want to return to the shadows. So you may want to be nice about it. Don't shout at your parents or friends about the truth that you learned at school. And be gentle with conspiracy theorists. I mean, those could be lessons. Those could be some ideas about the process, applying the allegory to the process of higher learning. You could make some connections there. That's all I have for you today. If you have any other questions, you can shoot me an email.